Hello everybody and welcome to the bus stop outside Stroud Waitrose. Now today I'm going to be going to the 2026 Stroud Vintage Bus Day, and my first bus to take me on the town shuttle feeder service from the Waitrose to Stroud College, where the event is being held, was a Dennis Dart SLF Alexander ALX 200. This was an absolutely amazing motor and my first time on an ALX 200.
That's it, yeah. Which is very, very great. Huh? Well, he was a bit fucking white racing. You haven't damaged me, Carl. I saw the car from down. They're all fucking pissing to the fucking bus tires. They're just fucked up here with this fucking weird, yeah. No, everybody on the bus is alright. We got the bus to the top of the hill. Hopefully nothing fell with it, you know what I mean? Fucking, so it was just nothing.
Here I am at Stroud College. This is where most or pretty much all of the bus routes arrive and depart from, with some heading out and stopping off at villages just outside of Stroud along with the town service. This is also where all of the model bus stands and memorabilia are, and as well this is where most of the buses which are not doing any operations and are just static are located. So if there are any buses you like but aren't doing any runs, then they'll most likely be stored at Stroud College for the majority of the day. There are a few nice buses here, including this Leyland Titan. There was this Volvo B10M Alexander PS, I think it was, and this Alexander Dash, which I hoped would be doing some runs, but in the end it wasn't. As well as that, there are 3 Dennis Tridents which were doing operations, as well as a few Dennis Darts and other more modern and more older things. My first bus was a Dennis Trident Alexander ALX 400. This was one of 3 and was the open top version. I believe it had an accident and was stored at Exeter Matford Depot for a couple of months whilst they converted it to open top, but I could be wrong. After that it went up to the Peak District to work on Stagecoach's well-known Peak Sightseer network, which now operates some newer open tops which have been converted, and some are also original open tops. Anyway, I'm taking this on the service, I think it was the 400, out to Nailsworth and back. Here I am arriving into Nailsworth. I have heard of this little village before, and to be honest I thought it would be a little bit bigger. However, where the buses stopped was actually quite a decent little bus station outside of the Tesco Express and what seemed like the main shopping street, if there even is one here. I have heard of this before, and I think the 6:20 service from Bath to Stroud does call in at Nailsworth on its way to and from Stroud. It would be handy if that service ran, but of course it doesn't run on Sundays, and it takes an absolute eternity to get from Bath to Stroud when it does run. Here I am leaving Nailsworth, this time on the top deck of this open topper, heading back to Stroud College via the town centre.
We should have brought a body armour with us.
Yeah, sure, shouldn't we?
I'm sorry if I get you in a picture.
Oh, that don't matter.
We'll always look after these things.
Ooh, that's a nice car down there.
It is, isn't it?
He looks so well looked after.
He must have more money than sense.
What's that?
Nico
Must
looks
take,
as good as us.
must take some parking in there too, mustn't it?
Skilled.
Yeah.
Morning. There's a lot of random people in Stroud.
And then my nan lived there. So I used to live there before she went to Sarah. I don't think she had.
bad idea getting rid of that.
Yeah, they did.
Something really happened in the current bus station. You right there? Yeah, someone's trying to get a take my practice today. Watch out, more next up. It's a new experiment chemical model.
Right, we're planning to do a bus in between.
God, there's another one.
Right,
New one right in
let's see. Do you see them? Do you see them? Have a look. Keep your eyes peeled. Emily.
Here I am arriving back into Stroud College, where you can see a number of other heritage bus vehicles, including an Olympian, some older Bristol VRs, an old coach which used to operate with Willits, a few other old buses such as GX06 DYW, the Enviro 300, which is stored in this kind of area, hence why it always goes to the Stroud Bus Rally. It would be nice if the Wyvern Enviro came down here, since I have heard of it, and it was supposed to go to the X55 bus running day, if you remember that one. However, it didn't. I think a tree came down and therefore it wasn't able to even leave its depot where it's stored. So it would be nice if that came down, but I suppose this is a little bit of a way from the Wyverns. Anyway, here I am arriving back into Stroud College for a little bit of a break before my next bus.
There's a sick train there. There's a sick train down here. But literally.
Right, if you go now.
Just ask the driver what bus you want.
Here we can see a few heritage vehicles doing the runaround at the college. Here is a X-Explore Dundee Volvo B7R Rally Right Clips Urban. Unfortunately, this was the one vehicle that I wanted to get some rides on, but didn't. It did 2 runs in the morning, which was on the timetable for the event, if you could call it a timetable. However, I missed both of those, as the feeder service from Waitrose arrived in just after it departed on the first run, and then the second run would mean I would miss that open top Dennis Triley. I believe it did go out later on, but I wasn't too sure what it was really doing then, because it wasn't on the timetable, so it could have been out of service, or it could have been doing runs and whatnot, and I didn't want to miss the Olympian, which I did get on later on in the video. As well as that, here is that nice Willits coach. This actually looks quite nice, and I quite like the colour scheme on the side of the coach, with the red, white and blue stripes. As well as that, you can see a Bristol VR off to the side, which I also quite like, as it is wearing the old original first Barbie livery. Here is GX06DYW, Stroud's local trans bus Enviro 300, arriving into the college. I wish more Enviro 300s were preserved. There are one or two of these trans bus Enviro 300 preserved, but the only ones I know about is this one and the Wyvern Enviro preservation. However, I do wish there are a few more in preservation, as well as the later Enviro 300, which used the Alexander Dennis Enviro kind of standard front, a bit like you see on Enviro 200s. Stagecoach still have a few of them running about, as well as ones with Scania and MAN engines, and First Bus Somerset used to have some before they all went for scrap. Anyway, after that Olympian pulled in, which I'll be getting in later on in the video, my next bus arrived in, which was a Dennis Trying Alexander ALX 400. I went on this at the Taunton Bus Rally around about a month ago, so I wasn't too fussed on sitting on the bottom, hence why I sat on the top deck instead. I'll be taking this on a round trip to the local estate at Cash's Green.
Can we just focus on this one and the dark? Yeah, if you want
Horrible day.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because they just debut in the town centre area. Everyone's got to love this. Ah, it was at NBO. Is NBO still there?
Here I am passing through the Merry Walks area. This is where Stroud Town Centre and most of the local shops are located, and this is where all of the main public buses stop and depart from. This is sort of Stroud's bus station, if you will.
Yeah, that was there this morning. I've been sat there virtually all day today.
So it's the first time I've been to it. And why is visible and 5
I want to do the dark.
So they're beyond that.
Yeah, but I've never been on a pointed one.
I did. Yeah. I didn't go on that point last year.
What was the Euro 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went on that last year. I remember
With-
being on the last year.
Oh. Multiple times. But it has to be, the thing is, it has to be something because I've done it with him where it's done 6 to 7 till 5 o'clock. I've been with him up until 5 o'clock since 7. So I was still in time to get his daughter is bus obsessed. And she loved it. Very
Here I am arriving into the main stopover point at Cash's Green. A few people got off to take pictures, but after about 2 or 3 minutes, we were back off on our way to Stroud College.
Wait, all of them got?
No,
Yeah,
there's still,
and then one came back.
there's still 3 for all
That they bought.
Yeah.
They all left up before. Then no one came back for a couple of days.
Oh, I didn't know.
We were looking at it like, what? Voice of that must be at least 90% no.
Still there.
13, 15.
As I arrive back into the college, you can see a number of preserved vehicles, the majority of which are old stagecoach vehicles. There were a lot of preserved stagecoach vehicles at this event, but that is probably because Stagecoach for a long time now have been the main operator in the Stroud and Gloucestershire area as a whole. Although saying that, Cotswold Green also brought along one of their Optare Solo SRs, which is usually used in mainstream service. Here is my next bus pulling into the main departure point at Stroud College. This was another ex-Stagecoach West Dennis Dart SLF Claxton Pointer 2, and I believe along with a few other buses here at the Stroud Bus Rally was preserved by the Stroud Low Floor Group. This wore the Gloucester City branding, which I would hazard a guess is the old branding Stagecoach used to use for local services in Gloucester and perhaps Cheltenham as well. I'm guessing it's a bit like how Stagecoach Southwest used to use X-City for their local services in Exeter a few years ago. For what it was, this was actually a pretty nice motor, however it had the newer engine like the Enviro 200 Darts have, rather than the older engine the ALX 200 had from earlier. Anyway, I'll be taking this on a round trip, about 35 minutes I think it was, to Stonehouse and back. Here I am arriving into the stopover point in the western part of Stonehouse Village. Stonehouse is a very nice village, at least from what I saw, and does have a small railway station on the Golden Valley line, I think it might be called. Correct me if I'm wrong. It is basically the line that runs between Swindon and Gloucester, with stations at Kemble, Stroud and Stonehouse.
Oh my god!
Here I am arriving into Stroud College again, where you can see basically the same vehicles from last time. There's an old Stagecoach Leyland, this Volvo B10M, and behind it there's some other kind of Leyland. As well as that, somewhere in the background there was the Volvo B7R Relief from Dundee, as well as a few other buses, such as this ALX 200 right here.
Oh yeah. I'm on 20. I'm on 20. I'm on 9. I need my.
After bagging myself a pretty decent ride on that Dennis Dart and buying myself a National Express Corgi coach model, ironically this Explore Dundee Volvo B7R Rally lined up, I think, to have another round trip. I'm not too sure what it was doing, so I didn't run over to get on it, especially since the bus stop was very busy, so the chances are the back row of seats would be full by the time I got over there. But maybe I should have gotten myself a ride on this. Whether I got the back seats or not would be a different matter. Now, if this event goes ahead next year, there's been a few rumours that it might not. I'm not particularly sure what's happening at the moment, but if it does, maybe I can bag myself a ride on this Volvo B7R Rally next year. Anyway, here is my next bus arriving, which is a Volvo B10M. Or so I thought. I couldn't decide whether or not to do this or the Olympian, but in the end I got on the Volvo B10M and then immediately got off. I chose the Olympian, which was the bus in my plan anyway, so I'm not too sure what I was doing. I was just larking about like I usually do. This was a lovely Volvo Olympian with Northern County Palatine 1 bodywork. This was a coach something or other, I can't remember the name. This wore a very bland grey livery, but on the inside I thought it was absolutely lovely, especially these seats. They were so comfortable and had a pretty nice maquette. A lot of these Northern Counties Palatine 1s with Volvo Olympian engines and chassis used to be in operation with First Bus Somerset, and before that, First Somerset and Avon. This would be my last run outside of Stroud Town, and I would be taking it back to Nailsworth like I did earlier with that open-top Trident. This was a lovely motor and is on par with some of the other vehicles I've been on, such as the Dennis Tridents.
They tried to kill me. I forgot how good the way I see it, you can do whenever I have one, I don't care. Their choice. Without getting some cover by that match. I have a military actually
Here I am I'm passing through Stroud Merry Walks once again, this time with a few less buses about. Here I am arriving back into Nailsworth. Once again I didn't get off the bus, but this time less people did get off the bus to take a photo with the vehicle. Although maybe a photo with this one would have been quite nice and a little bit special, as I found this vehicle rather unique. I've never been on a Northern Counties Palatine 1, and Northern Counties in general are kind of rare in the preservation industry, at least in the southwest. The only other Northern Counties I've been on were ones with Palatine 2 bodywork at the lowest floor running days. There were 2 of them, but I found this one slightly more interesting, with the Palatine 1. Anyway, after spending about a minute in Nailsworth, it was back to Stroud, where the driver absolutely floored it. He really put the pedal to the metal, and we arrived in 15 minutes early.
Riley is in the Big Brothers room.
I love Big Brother.
D6.
I love how Jojo Siva, isn't it?
Jojo is in
I also like Love Island. Are you not a Love Island? I love it. It's so funny. It's so cool.
I don't know why I still haven't met him. Is he still standing? Yeah. Like this guy, we can actually talk now. Yeah, because he tells me what's going
My favourite shows is Family Guy. Like, I hate telling people that. Which is your favourite episode? Yeah, I love that one. I love the D&B one. That's really funny. I love that one. Yeah, when they go to the disco and it's like, I don't know.
Here I am departing a random bus stop on the outskirts of the town. I wasn't too sure if you could get off at random bus stops or not, but I guess as long as you press the bell, you can. After all, it is a bus.
Yeah.
arriving back into Stroud College for the final time. A few of the passengers had actually left, along with a few of the buses, and the buses that remained had had a little bit of a shift around the college car park.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's less. There was an open day at Stagecoach Depots when they 40. And I went to boss wash. I guarantee there's probably a bus out that's like this. That's probably going. It's probably that other week now because there's no
Here I am back at Stroud College. Now, because the bus arrived in 15 minutes early at 15:15 and my bus didn't leave until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I had about 45 minutes just to mosey around the site whilst it was actually quiet and enjoy myself and film a few buses arrive and depart. After filming a few buses arrive and depart, some of which were before that last voiceover I did, some of which I didn't even bother to put in, here is my last bus. I was hoping this would be the Explore Dundee Volvo B7 RLE, but I'm not even too sure if that did any more runs, since the only run left was the 5 o'clocker town shuttle service, the 1 an hour after this, and quite frankly I couldn't be bothered to wait for that. Anyway, this was a very nice Leyland coach. It even had tables, and although it was quite old, I reckon it's better than some of the Flixbus or Megabus coaches you get now. The seats were certainly very well padded. I would be taking this back to Waitrose, and considering I don't like old buses, I thought it sounded pretty nice.
So where we are now is
As I leave Stroud Murray Walks, we can see the View Cinema in the background, as well as a Stagecoach West Scania N230UD ADL Enviro 400. Lots of these are used across the Stagecoach West network, as well as the Stagecoach network in general. Here I am arriving back at Stroud Waitrose near the London Road car park. Yes, I got a lift up here. I didn't get the train as the first train from Bridgewater wouldn't have gotten me into Stroud for 10 o'clock in the morning. The train times on a Sunday from Bridgewater are absolutely terrible, and it's even worse at some other stations. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Just to let you know, there are a lot of bus related videos coming up. I still haven't released my York videos, and there are at least 2, and I think there are 3 bus rallies all coming up near enough in a row. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone!